Hello, everyone. It's Martha Burgess Novak, and here's Christina McCarthy.
I'm out of frame here.
All right, we got to get you in frame.
Okay.
We're just going to have to be physically close here. We are so glad to talk with you today. Today's radio show is about waiting, and all the aspects, and when it's good and when it's not so good. Today's show probably should be called, instead of waiting, although waiting means a lot to people. I think they recognize sometimes their lives when we wait. But it's really about a life on hold, you know? That's what we mean by waiting today. So we're going to talk about that, all the aspects. If you recognize yourself in some of this, because we certainly recognize ourselves in some of this, we're going to give you some tips about how to start getting on with things instead of waiting. We hope that we reveal waiting for what it is as well. Let's do a quick prayer, getting us all on the same page, and then we'll launch off into the show. How's that? All right. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are and all everything is in this world, we thank you so much for all of us who gather together under the banner of knowing the you in us as the aspect of love we are. We open ourselves to hearing this show, to offering our comments and suggestions as well, to letting you flow through us all in your highest and most powerful and soothing aspects. We thank you so much, dear God, for helping us get on with things, for we have delayed long enough, and we now open ourselves to see, hear, sense, and know what you would have us do as we open to the truth that lies in your enlightenment. We ask now to go on this journey with you, that we may meld with the mind of God, a larger mind in us than our egocentric minds. We thank you so much for all of this, dear God. We gladly say we know nothing, for it is you through us and through all things and all people that do know it all. We thank you. And say this prayer now. In your name, in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of each and every person listening and watching the show today. Thank you. And so it is. So the first thing that I thought of, Christina and I have known each other. How long have we known each other? I think 15 or 16 years, probably more.
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah, we were, 16 when we met?
Oh, yeah. There you go. She was. I was not. But anyway, we've known each other quite a long time. So she has lived through a lot and a lot of personal things with me as well. And she lived through my marriage to, my second marriage to Michael. It was really cute. I don't know whether you all know this about me, but my husband is Austrian. And something very dear happened to us that made me think of waiting. And that was, Michael and I have known each other for about 50 years. He found me again on LinkedIn. We had lost touch for about 35 years. And when we found each other, we just, it was one of those real spiritual things. We knew it was our time. And so I immediately said to Michael, why don't you come on over? He had lost his wife, and I was divorced by 12 years. So Michael had feelings for me right away, like I had for him. We had Skyped, and almost immediately he went to his daughter, a very wise woman, his daughter, and he said, I have feelings for Martha. I can't explain this. It's happening really fast. And she has invited me to come to her house in Atlanta. And he said, what should I do? And Sonia, in her wisdom, said, what are you waiting for? You're old. Go.
Get on with it.
Get on with it. I think one of the reasons that story comes to mind is I hope that you will not wait till you're old to get on with it. That's what this show's about today. Christina and I have had a lot of shared experiences and a lot of unique experiences that are exclusively our own. We're going to tell you today, part of which has led us to the philosophies that we talk about. And And we hope you enjoyed the show today. And certainly, if you are going to call in, we'd love to hear from you. It's 347-850-1647, which is our number. I'll try not to go out of frame when I'm looking at that number. 347-850-1647. If you'd like to talk to us, we'd love to talk to you. And we do have a call today, so let's hope that we can actually bring them in, unlike 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, we had a lot of trouble.
Hi. I'm talking to a 703 exchange. To whom am I speaking?
Hi, this is Sue.
Hey, Sue. How are you?
Good. I just dialed in, so I don't know the topic.
Well, you know what? The topic is on having our lives on hold, on waiting. But the truth is, we always love to hear from you, and we'll go anywhere you tell us to go. So what would you like to talk about today? What's on your mind?
Do you offer readings?
Well, we do, but here's the interesting thing. While we are enormously intuitive, and we are, and while we even do some mediumship, and we do, we don't seek that. What Christina and I do, and my team does, and you can read about this on our website, which is marthaburgessnovak.net. What we do is we offer sessions on consciousness. So indeed, you can't reach consciousness until you get rid of your, childhood issues. So we certainly do that. But we tend to work with people that want to do this over a period of time, getting over themselves. And certainly intuition plays a huge part in what we do with you. And we don't mind answering any questions that you pose. But in terms of being psychics, that's not where we find our mission is. There's nothing wrong with that, of course. We're fine with any of that. It is part of our lives on a day-to-day basis. But people don't use us usually that way. People are wanting a deeper level of themselves as God and trying to reach that state where we're all happy no matter what happens, and God is very real in our lives, and we live in the abundance of that. So that's the difference and thank you for the opportunity, actually, of our explaining ourselves, because I don't do that very often on the show. I usually just dive in with information. Sweetie Sue, we'll answer any questions that you have right now. If you want to ask us a question, that's just fine.
Well, I'm dealing with the parent that is finding it hard to accept reality in terms of moving forward in his life, in terms of aging process, and his independence. He's 92, and I'm trying to work with him work with him in terms of moving forward. So he lives by himself, independent, and I'm trying to assist him with becoming more flexible and making his life a lot more enjoyable. That's kind of where I'm at now, but it's difficult.
It is difficult. I think that Christina and I are going to have some things that we can say about this, and where the line comes between intuition and our own experience and the advice that comes out of that, I think is a hard line to be clear on. So I'm going to just jump in there, but you have a lot to say.
Yeah.
Christina's going through this right now. I have been through it. My parents have passed. But I will say, number one, it makes it a lot easier when you're not responsible for his happiness. If you can go and visit and make sure that, certainly his needs are provided for, you can't do it all, sweetheart. And if we go into this experience of aging parents and taking care of them with the knowledge that we can change them and make them happy and exhaust ourselves in the process by being good children, that's actually not the way to go.
Yeah, I came to this realization just this year. My parents are still fairly young, and I feel like they have a long life ahead of them, but my dad had very serious heart surgery earlier in the year. And of course, coming out of the surgery, there were a lot of rules about what he should eat and what he should not eat and what he should do. And in the beginning, I was very adamant about forcing those rules on him. And I'm like, if I'm going to be a good daughter, I need to make sure he does what the doctor says. I need to make sure that he does all of this so he's here for a really long time. But somewhere in that process, I realized what I was doing was not very loving. I had forgotten that he needed to enjoy his life and that it was his body and his choices, and I could give him the information, but I needed to step back and let him make those choices for himself, because I realized my relationship with him and my love for him was more important than any rules. And that once that became the focus, that I just wanted to love him, then all the other stuff just kind of fell away, and it wasn't as hard.
I think, Sue, the reason that we're picking this up and talking to you like this and starting where we are with all this is that your lines are muddied. You do sometimes too much. You take responsibility for others that is not yours. Oddly enough, I feel very strongly about this. And when Christina was talking, Spirit was leading me to this. While this show is about waiting and how we shouldn't wait, there's part of this that's a distraction for you. If you can worry about your dad, throw yourself into your dad, do a little too much for your dad, you don't have to create your own life.
Yeah.
And I feel very strongly that that's what's going on here. I think that's one of the reasons you called into the show. And I need for you to back up a little bit, be a good daughter, make sure he has the care for himself. I mean, that there are things like visiting nurses and visiting angels and things that will go into the home. If there is something physically wrong with someone, hospice is a marvelous organization that will come into the home. But you are not supposed to do it all. Yeah. You're supposed to get on with your life. I mean, the bottom line here is, and please forgive me, I'm not trying to be cruel about this, but I asked my class this yesterday, and that is, who is going to leave ultimately and who is going to remain? You're the one that's going to remain. Your dad's 92. God bless him. I hope he has many more years, my darling. But you're the one that has got to have a life. You're the one that's supposed to go on and be happy and create the life you want. He has had the life he's wanted. He has the life he wants now, believe it or not, even if it is unhappy. So, and I don't think that's true of your dad, but darling, we are all responsible for ourselves, even when we are in our old age. So there is a little bit of you not knowing where those lines should not be crossed for your well-being. There is no book, I was thinking of this too when Christina was talking, that tells you what a good daughter should or should not do. And you cannot buy into what other people say or think or their experiences. There is, it's interesting because when we are losing our parents or when we're caring for them in their old age, there's just no book that says how to do this. We have to, every single, every single challenge that comes up for us is brand new and unique to us. Nobody's walked this path before, and nobody can tell us how to do it. We have to search our own hearts and do that. But we have to search our own hearts in clarity, not in issues that says, oh, I feel guilty if I don't go cross the lines. That started in your childhood, and we can't cross the lines because that's just using your father as an excuse to not get on with your own life. And if you are interested in your spirituality, and you obviously are, to call a show like this, you've got to know where those lines are.
And there has to be a real clarity and distinction between my path and his path. Your father has his own path, and I had to realize that with mine. His path and his choices are his. I can't impose my ideas and my choices on him. I can only be there to love. And I think, just take a good look at that and get real clear and clean about that. Another suggestion, you may have already done this, but I think a really honest, compassionate conversation goes a long way. This is a hard transition for people at this age, giving up their freedom and their independence. And if your father is open to it, I say just have a really clear conversation where you let him speak that and honestly hear him with love and compassion. That could help him move through it and be ready to move on to the next stage. It may or may not work. So don't put any weight or expectation on what that's going to do, but I think it's always good to let people be heard,
And in that,
Okay.
there's some real practical suggestions to be made too, darling. I know that while I think it's marvelous to have somebody's cooperation, you've described this as he's having a hard time with this. So you want to lay out your case one time, and if he can't do it, he can't do it. I know that in my mother's case, when she was in her old age, she gave up everything very graciously. She gave up driving. She gave up everything. My father, on the other hand, was quite an independent cuss, and he was not going to give up a damn thing.
Yeah.
So we had to get a bit tricky, but it was a trickiness that, you have to ask what is for everybody's highest and best good. My father, had we not taken the car away from him, could have killed somebody. He could have killed himself. It could have been disastrous in a lot of ways. He should not have been driving. Now, these things occurred to us over a period of time, and what happened in our case was that one day some policemen came to our door and said that my father had been at the mall and had parked, backed out of his parking place and hit the car behind him and just driven off. Now, I don't think my father I don't know whether he just didn't compute. We didn't know he was this ill at the time, obviously. Yeah. So when this happened, we went, whoa. We got my dad evaluated. We found out he was having Alzheimer's. And so what we did was we talked to our lawyer, who was a really close friend, and we said, would you go down to the court with him, and would you take the judge aside and have the judge pull his license, because this man should not be driving. We can't take it away. You have to be very smart about this, Sue, because you've got to remain a friend to your dad. So you're going to have other people do the dirty work. So what was interesting was the judge told our lawyer, I can't do that. We've had so many suits by older people that we can't afford to have any more. We do not get involved with this. So all of a sudden we had to have a little conference because we needed that car taken away from him, and I couldn't do that because I had to be his caretaker. So what we ended up doing was we called the insurance company and we said, pull his insurance and put it under my husband's name so that we can hire someone, or we can drive my father to the store or wherever he wants to go. So we still have a car, but that he is not allowed to drive it himself. Now, that doesn't mean that my father didn't threaten, I'm going to get in that car and I'm going to go downtown, I'm going to do all. And we'd say, you're going to send my husband to jail if you do that, because he's got the insurance on your car. They pulled your insurance. And he backed down because that frightened him. And we had to do it several times, but he backed down ultimately, and he settled into the new way of doing things. The truth is, now in my father's case, because he had Alzheimer's, it may be very different from yours if your dad is clear-headed. The worst part of it was when my dad was sliding into it, because he still had a lot of fight in him, and he wanted to control everything egoically. And it was very difficult for us to think ahead and try to do that. We had to wrestle the checkbook out of his hands, for example. Because,
I understand completely.
Yeah, because anybody that called could sell my father anything. He'd write checks for everything, He'd give him his credit card numbers, and you've got to stop that. And if you have to be a little tricky, and here we are espousing honesty and all that, it's nice if you can be honest and be what do I want to say? And win cooperation. But if you can't, you've got to protect that family, and you've got to protect your dad. So you're going to have to find other ways to do this. We talked about getting, what we did ultimately was we didn't let him write any checks, and we took the credit cards and gave them all to the lawyer or to us, and we handled it. So he really didn't have anything anymore. What we did was we replaced it with other things for him to feel powerful about. You know, we gave him his books and things. He wasn't able to read them at that point, but he went through the motions of it, and that made him feel like he had control. So you've got to take control away in certain areas while giving control in other areas that don't matter, so you can be protected and he can be protected. Yeah. So while we are talking about some very lofty and very big principles in theory, we are also talking about some practical considerations so that you and your family and your father are protected and have enough money for the rest of his life.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm sure he's very much in fear right now. This is very scary for him, and you're probably in fear too, as you know, someone who loves him, and you're dealing with your own issues as his daughter. I would encourage you to get in touch with whatever your sense of spirituality is, whether that's God or whatever you call it, and invite that into the situation, because you're the one that needs to change the energy and come from a place of love and not fear, because you're the one that's going to direct where this needs to go. And if you're in that space, you're going to know what decisions to make and how to speak to him and when to push and when to, hug, and, you're going to know what you need to do if you're in that space listening to that voice.
There are hard decisions to be made ahead for all of us in this situation. But you're going to have a marvelous comfort knowing that you're not making your, I was thinking this morning, oddly enough, that we're talking about this. I was thinking, I usually meditate on these shows before we begin, and some things crossed my mind, so here you are, so I'm going to share them with you. My mother died first, 5 years before my father, and I remember maybe a good 10 years before that, being in Europe with my first husband. We came home, and my mother was very excited. My mother was very social. And she said, I went to one of the local senior facilities, and it was so nice, and all my friends are there, and it was fabulous, and I think we ought to move into that. And you know what? I'm ashamed to say, but I'm human. I shot it down because I was afraid for things to change. Let me tell you, it was much tougher on me going through every single item in that house than it was had I listened to the wisdom of my mother. I think maybe she would have lived longer. She was lonely. My father had Alzheimer's. She really was a very lonely person. She could have had loads of friends. I made a wrong call back then because I was working from issues. Yeah. The interesting thing was when these things evolved the way they did, it was a much easier experience with my father because I listened to God. I listened to this energy that was transcendent, and I'd had 5 more years to work on, 15 more years to work on myself, and it was much easier to make those clear decisions about what's in his best interest, my best interest, and everybody's best interest, and what we should have done. That was, while it was still hard to lose your dad, that was a much easier time than the time before when I got in the way. So what Christina is saying is true, darling. You have got to reach some clarity. Now, we've got our company set up. Get on marthaburgessnovak.net, and see what we have to offer. And if we're not your people, then you'll find your people. But you need that clarity, and you need someone to talk through this with you and get old issues out of the way, because there's no book that says what a good daughter is. It's a moment-by-moment thing. And if you are working from the ego, you're going to get another result. And if you're working from the highest self, while you may be sad, you actually know it's the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
I knew it was the right thing to do when we found a facility for my father, because he had Alzheimer's, and we found a very nice facility with a very nice Alzheimer's floor. For a solid year, every single time I would go and visit him, he had every item stacked up against the wall ready to go home. but I knew he needed to stay there. I was traveling a lot. He needed to be cared for. He needed to be seen. He needed eyes on him all the time. He needed social interaction. He needed a lot of things that I could not give him. It was the right thing to do, even though he didn't like it. And I took comfort in that. And you are going to have to do the same thing. You know, you're going to have to think in those larger arenas, darling. Okay?
Sure. Okay.
Much success to you, Sue. And we'll
Thank
be
you.
keeping you in our prayers. You have something
No,
you want to share?
I would just agree with you.
Okay. That's nice. All right, darling. Take care now.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. We're going to go to another call, and we know who this one is. Hey, Jay.
Hey, Martha.
How are you?
Great. We're having a great day.
You have a great day?
Yeah, start of a great day.
Well, we're glad talking to you. That always makes our day better. I'm so glad to hear from you. So how are you
Good to
today?
hear from you, too. Hey, so...
What, dear?
Yeah, so actually it's been there's always something going on in my world, actually. Went to see how I support my teacher. She was really appreciative of my help, which is great. And as my yoga teacher, had a talk with a good friend of my a student yesterday. That was a great talk too. And today I'm just going out to with my friend and going out to a conscious conversation at a pizza place. So it'd be a great day. Start a great day.
Conscious conversations can be everywhere, including the pizza place. You never know.
And enlightenment.
The pizza and enlightenment. You can't beat it. It's fabulous. Well, that's wonderful, darling. I'm so glad to see you getting on with your life. You know, Jay and I have been friends for a long time through this radio show, and now we're friends kind of outside as well. And you know, I'm just delighted, Jay, that your life has turned a corner here, and you're making yourself happy. That's a wonderful thing.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, it's a long time coming. I mean, it's like what you're saying in the conversation. Sometimes we think we have to wait till something happens to move forward. I think we gotta. I think that's. I don't think we have any time for that. You know, obligations or family obligations or something like that. You know, may block us, but it's basically we make that decision to stay there or move forward or do something about what we want to do in our life. So I'm just making that decision right now.
You're right, and I'm thrilled you're making that decision. Christina said something in our class yesterday. We have an advanced class on Saturdays. And she was saying one of the things that she learned through this experience of her dad was that she needed to take really good care of herself during that time.
Yeah.
And you're making me think of that because I think sometimes when we're going through low periods and we're going through family obligations, as you say, that can be pretty tough. That's not the time to desert ourselves and not do for ourselves. That's the time to do more for ourselves so that we can always hold on to our balance no matter what is going on. And I think you found that. And look at you. You're sailing these days. And I can hear the happiness in your voice, Jay. It's a lovely thing to hear.
And I think it's great that you've called in on this particular show as well because you're evidence of what we're here to talk about today, to show people that it is possible, to stop waiting and to start moving and get on with your life and find those balance points and enjoy yourself.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah, we really can't think too far ahead. I mean, in terms of where we're going in our own lives. I mean, we don't have this present moment. That's all we do. That's all we have, actually. Yeah. So I think that we always tend to think that way because in a fear of whatever that is.
I agree with you.
Too far ahead or looking at the past too.
I agree with you. I think that we, I mentioned this yesterday in class too. We are so busy I guess it was 2 weeks ago, speculating about what's going to happen. Our political leaders make a move. Oh, everybody speculates. And we speculate on everything. And it's just our fear revealing itself because all you've got, as you say, is right now. Make it a good one.
Yeah.
So if we get our minds off right now and making it a good one, we don't create the life we want because our lives are made of these moments. And so it becomes very important to wake up right now and have this one be good and in some way, even if we're hurting, by the way.
Yes.
But there's a gift in everything. So, I feel very strongly about that. And I think this is one of the reasons Christina and I felt so strongly about this show.
I'm still going to go to about this. Well, thanks so much. This going back to this practice thing again. I think we have to really continue to do this for 20 to 40 days of setting our mindset. So actually, when you have these situations that come up, they're not as dramatic and really stressing on our bodies to the point where we actually can cause a physical ailment to really, really manifest.
Yeah.
And I just wondered about your thoughts about that, because I feel that there's something missing here, the practice. Because I was at your workshop on Friday with my teacher, and some of the people, I knew, just watching some of the people around the room, some people who were really engaged were taking notes and really engaged in the workshop, because there was participation in it, right? The teacher was asking questions in the class. And you can tell the people who are just there, and people, maybe they got something, but people who were really engaged and came back the second and third day for the workshop. So it just really says that I don't know what your experience is, but I just find out, why is it now that we have a lack of commitment that will actually benefit ourselves in the future or in the present? And not really do the stuff for it. It just baffles me that where we are, even in a society of all the people in the world, that it just, there's no really, okay, let's just do this for the whole earth. Let's just do this for myself and see how it benefits myself. And you hear the stories, you hear the testimonies of this happening, but yet it kind of doesn't sink in sometimes of why that we don't do the work or the commitment work.
I understand that. I know what you're saying. However, I really feel strongly that we're at an interesting place in time. Certainly, the things that are available now have always been available in some sort of energy somewhere. However, I do feel like the world is waking up or not right now, and we are on the cutting edge of something that is unprecedented. Whether it is just the energy on the planet that's getting more intense, whether the everything is speeding up, which we are all agreeing on, and that is exerting more pressure. Something's happening so that we have the choice of consciousness, not consciousness, and you can call that anything you want. You can call that a political division, you can call that an economic division, you can call that a racial division, you can call that any kind of division. The fact is, it's about consciousness and about who we decide to be. So I do think that something like that is going on right now. And that you yourself have made that choice. I urge you not to be discouraged about this, because I do feel like that certain people are called to this right now and certain people are not. But that doesn't mean that in 20 or 30 years of struggle, somebody's not going to be called to it that denies it today. It was funny that you're mentioning this and about class and taking notes, because we were laughing yesterday in our class because somebody called me the expert on whatever, and I said, "Excuse me, I am not the expert, and I can prove it to you." And I said, "Here's how I can prove it to you. I have been teaching for years and years and years and years." All sorts of classes, spirituality, acting, consciousness, call it whatever you want. The people in my acting class, for example, heard the very same information, and some people took what I said and absolutely acted on it and made it their own out in the world, and some people are watching those people on television. It wasn't what I said, so I'm not the expert. I'm just the mouthpiece. There's quite a difference. And the expert is you, and whether you hear it or not, and whether you move on it or not, and whether this becomes your life in some way. So I think that it is this is a time of waking up. And as you will recall in your own life, Jay, and certainly in mine, and I would think Christina would agree with this, because we all start out in fear. That's the ego child's mind state energy. Because we've started out in that kind of energy, we have to go through a lot of things that we call mistakes that we would have done differently. It makes us wise. I mean, then we wake up and go, wait a minute, okay, there's a different way of doing this. There's a different way of seeing this. We go on a search, and that's our divine quest, which eventually leads to our potential and really true happiness, I think.
And I think right now I agree with Martha wholeheartedly about where we are on this planet right now. You can feel the intensity of the energy, and we're all being called to more.
Yeah.
We're giving the choice to choose more or to move or to stay where we are and be miserable. And it's in our face right now. And I think one of the things that we also have is people that are trying to work on ourselves and work on consciousness. We have the choice of how we choose to look at this time. We can look at it as a very scary time because things are so polarizing, and we can look at it as bad because other people aren't moving. But the truth is, it's all perfect and it's all beautiful, because it's really propelling some real change, an undercurrent of change.
Yes, it is. And pain is actually part of it.
Yeah.
Because what you're saying about being miserable, I think if we're not miserable, we stay where we are.
Exactly. You can become very ambivalent in your life, and I think a lot of us had become very ambivalent about life and about living and about where we are, and this time right here, right now, is waking us up to that.
Yeah, I think so too. So, we all get it in our way. I'm very happy for you, Jay, that you're understanding this. I think that one of the things that happened to me is that having gone on this journey and continuing to discover and know myself on deeper level has given me a terrific compassion for how the world struggles with this.
Yeah.
Everybody's struggling. Everybody has a backstory. Nothing's what it seems here. And I think one of the advantages to this work is the compassion that comes out of it. But you've got to discover it for yourself first. You have to, realize that we are, I wrote in one of my books that we have to have forgiveness and compassion for all the things that humans do to find their way home. And that's true. And we're all going through that right now. Oh, we're hearing from our friend Celine. Yeah, Celine, I agree with you. But the interesting things, when you get stuck, we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. Yeah. We're going to address that so that you will know why you're getting depressed. Yes. She was saying that's, most of the time she's up, and then sometimes she's depressed. We're actually going to talk about that in just a minute, okay? Jay, I'm proud of you and happy for you.
I'm very grateful for hearing that. It's been a long time and a lot of stuff has been going up and down, and just if something comes my way, I think I have a better understanding of how to deal with it now than I did before. So
yeah, I think so too.
Just practice.
So good for you, darling. Thank you so much. Oh, did you have something else to say? Please don't let me cut you off. Go ahead.
I've had those ups and downs too. That you're talking to the lady who emailed her or something like that. And in regards to that, I think it really find a practice that will work for you, so you don't have those ups and downs, or you can work with those ups and downs. Because we actually can push those feelings away. Yeah. Eventually, if we don't do that, if we do that, I should say, they will actually manifest in our physical body, and that's a bad thing, I always say.
Yes, thank you for bringing me.
It's actually.
Yeah, thank you for bringing me around to that again, because I did have something to say to that, and it just went right out of my head. When you talk about, you said you wanted to know our thoughts on how things manifest in the physical body. I think when we suppress our mental, emotional, and spiritual states, and we are not moving, I think that what happens is many times the last thing that is the bell, the wake-up bell, is our physical bodies. These distortions of our energy in these other bodies finally influence our physical body as a ringing bell, so that, well, if you won't listen to me in the more subtle realms, here's this.
Yeah,
and
I know. I've always thought of it that way too. Like God's been whispering the whole time, going, "Look at this, look at this, look at this," and we push it away and push it away and push it away, and finally, it's just that neon sign of your physical body. Because when you're physically impaired, you can't ignore that.
You can't ignore that when you're in pain or something. So I do feel like that is one of the big wake-up calls that human beings respond to. The whole point, though, is to try to increase your sensitivity and awareness so that you can read the signals in other more subtle realms, so it doesn't have to get to that.
Yeah.
And that's certainly something that we do in our business. I've thought for years, this is not just about me removing your issues. This is about me opening to the gyre that life is, and visiting the mental realm, the emotional realm, the physical realm, the spiritual realm, and cleaning it all up so that change is absolutely imminent and stays, because you're addressing everything that could have contributed to that. Yeah. Oh, well, Kat, I'm so glad that you did find it, because that number she has asked for, the calling number, is 347-850-1647. It is a USA number. We would love to hear from you. Jay, thank you so much for calling. We love you, and I'm so happy for you. It's wonderful to hear your voice. Okay?
You're very welcome. Thanks, ladies.
Take care. We'll talk to you next week,
care.
I hope.
Yes.
We look forward to you.
Great topics, too.
Thank you, dear.
Yeah, thank you. Be blessed. Yeah, thanks, Martha.
You too, dear. We love hearing from you all over and over again. It's so much fun. Now, we've just gotten my friend Lisa, who wrote in. She says, my lower back hurts so much when I am not releasing whatever is going on in my life that I'm not dealing with. It is my sign that I'm not moving on. And that's a common sign.
Yeah.
You know, that really is a common sign. When we have overworked, or when we are too stressed and not dealing with something, our lower back is our early childhood home issues. So that's where they're stored. So when the back goes out, as a matter of fact, I met Lisa's sister this week.
Yeah, I was going to say, Tracy laying on the floor.
That's right. My darling Tracy is one of my dear healers as well. I was doing an AT&T seminar, and she used to work for them. And when I finished the seminar, I kept noticing this darling woman lying on the floor all the time. And I went over, and I remember standing over her saying, "What are you doing?" And she said, "My back is killing me. I've had chronic back trouble always." And I said, "Well, come to see me tomorrow, and we'll talk about it." And sure enough, she doesn't have any more. So we understand that, Lisa. It's actually, if you can understand that that's a signal that you've done too much. It's a signal that you're ignoring some part of you. It's a signal to get straight with you. Yeah. We have all sorts of signals, that tell us that. So if we can stop thinking of pain as something to be avoided and being afraid of these things, and we can actually cooperate with it and see what it's telling us, then we can go on, and many times have a much happier life, and many times be out of pain. So, going back to what we are talking about, we are wanting to talk today, but we can talk about anything you want, but we are wanting to put on the table that we shouldn't wait anymore. A life on hold is no life, because it is really not in cooperation with the highest part of you. God is all you are. Now, God presents, according to your understanding and mine, as the absence of itself, the fear-based self, the self that is the ego child's mind, the part of you that is reactive to life instead of something else, or the highest self, which is the love-based self, the part of you that believes in the fullness of God and is creating what you want. I remember an exercise we did years ago, a couple of years ago, I think. I took a pen and I put it in somebody's pocket. And I said, that's what you want. What are you going to do about it? This is the only one that got up out of her chair and went over and plucked the pen out of the pocket. Go get it.
Yeah.
Okay? And we're going to talk about that today. Because what we hear is some common themes about waiting, like, I've written some down.
Yes.
I'm waiting to lose weight. I'm not going to do it till I lose weight. I'm waiting to have my teeth done. I'm waiting for a partner to do that with. I'm waiting for enough money. I'm waiting to feel safe. I'm waiting for my children to grow up and leave the house. And then the ever-present, I've waited too long and it's too late now.
Yeah.
I want to put something on the table for you. All those are excuses. We want to take your excuses away. And we're going to tell you why you're afraid for us to take them away and why they are in place today and what you can do about it. Because wouldn't it be wonderful if you don't wait anymore and you just simply, in the grace and goodness of God, go get what you want? Okay. The kind of waiting this show is about makes people unhappy, and you might think it's because we're all trained to instant gratification. The truth is, no, we're not trained to instant gratification. We miss some training that it isn't about instant gratification. We miss that training in our childhood. Sometimes parents don't do a very good job of teaching this because they're not emotionally mature themselves. So that's certainly part of this system, but here's more of it. The big reason waiting makes us unhappy is that it isn't movement. And we must move mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually to be happy. This is because God, our definition of God, is an infinite and ever-expanding set of truths, always in motion. In motion. So if there is waiting, i.e. stagnation, waiting is just a nice word for stagnation, it is against and going in the direction that you don't want to go instead of the direction that you do. You've got to have movement. Okay. Your spiritual, authentic state, as, by the way, the spiritual being in physical form, not the other way around, is moving. Thinking new and deepening thoughts. Feeling new and deepening feelings. Doing things that are new physically. And discovering new and deepening spiritual depths that lead you sometimes, if you go far enough, to divine purpose.
Yeah, and on our list of things that we hear and we've said ourselves about waiting, one of the most popular things I hear is, I'm waiting for a sign. And I think that's a really tricky way to use God as an excuse instead of what God is really meant for, because as I see it, the message is in the movement. When you move, God can direct you. God can use that movement to say, this is where this is what you need. This is what's good. This is where you want to go. It's a constant redirecting, but you have to be moving on the path to get redirected.
And you also have to have rather an open mind about this.
Yeah.
Because Christina and I were talking earlier, I've seen clients that I can just start them moving. This is wonderful. They say, oh, I would like to take this course or learn how to do this, but the course doesn't make. And they never try it again. They don't see that that's a redirection of the energy, that God is just adjusting them. They see it as the door slamming. It's a sign I'm not supposed to do it. Let me tell you, you're supposed to get what you want. You're supposed to create the life you want in this life. The fact that you don't have it yet, because there's some issues in the way. That's all that's going on. Okay? Now, if we are not moving mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually enough, by the way, we get depressed. Or if we are suppressing something that we are supposed to know and deal with, we get depressed. It is the inevitable outcome of stagnation.
Yeah, that energy has to go somewhere, and it's meant to go through us. It's meant to pass. It's meant to be felt and let go of.
That's absolutely
But
right.
if you don't do that, the natural process, it does become suppressed within you, and that energy becomes depression.
You know, a lot of people have favorite Bible verse. I have a favorite phrase in the Bible, which is, it came to pass. For many years, I acknowledged, I completely ignored what that meant.
Yeah, just
but everything
an
comes
opening line.
That's right, it's just an opening line.
Like once upon a time.
Right. But it does. It comes to pass. And it's supposed to. None of this is supposed to get you in the end. What gets you in the end is not dealing with it, is suppressing it, is closing it up. You know, there's a field of psychology that says there's no such thing as depression. Depression is a repository from feelings that you don't want to face.
Yeah.
And for movement that you don't want to get on with. So we say get on with it.
And the things that we're so afraid of facing from our childhood, and I know we were going to talk about this later, but I'm jumping there. Now, we survived. We already survived those things, and we're just tricking ourselves into saying, I don't want to relive that and go through that again, but the truth is you're not reliving it. You're letting it go.
That's right. I think that people are afraid to do this work, and rightly so, if they perceive consciousness as having to go back and relive and dig all this stuff up again. You just have to be willing to confront your lies, because everything except the ascended God and your potential is a lie. What frightens us, I think, is a movement and the unknown and these deeper levels of God as us in potential, which is what this is. And the seeming uncontrollability about all this. But we're here to tell you that anybody who has made this journey to consciousness will tell you that when you're working from the ego child's mind, you are seizing control as often as you can because you are not in control. That's the reason for OCD. That's the reason for all sorts of control. There are people that control overtly, and there are people that control subtly, and everybody's afraid. That's what precedes everything, is this fear that you are not in control. Yeah. So that's the state that you're not in control of. You see, you're forgetting that God is all you are, and the ascended God is all you are, if that isn't enough wonderful information for you. And that is pure love, and that is pure creativity, and that is pure beneficence, and that is pure compassion. That's what you are. The reason you're not living it yet, pure abundance and everything else, is because you're in the way. You're in the way.
Yeah, I sometimes think of the image of like a yard hose pipe.
Mm-hmm.
I think of myself as the hose pipe and God as the water.
Oh, I
and
love
it's
that.
like you can turn it on full blast, or you can turn it on a trickle, or you can kink the hose or step on it. You're making the choice of how much of that you allow to come through. It's there waiting. You know, it's there available. It's up to us whether we're using it or not.
Yeah, and you've got to remember that the ego child's mind is your propaganda machine. It's telling you that the only reason you're alive is what it decided. And that's just not true. It's in the way. I'm really thrilled that you were as brilliant as you were and you created these issues in your childhood because you survived. But now you have survived. The time is to open the mind, to start expanding and to get what you want now. This is about consciousness. This is about enlightenment. The world is changing. You've got to have a living God that works for you. And the living God that works for you is not outside you. It's not my God or Christina's or the church's or nature's. It's the one inside of you that you're just not using to the maximum effect and power. And you're supposed to. I mean, this is the age of individual consciousness. That's what I think is an opening line of one of my books. It's the age of individual consciousness. It is not about movements right now. It's about you, about us, about waking up. Yes, our dear Celine said, my propaganda machine is on full blast right now. They always are.
Yes.
And you know what? I had a friend this week, a client this week. It was so cute. She is, she tries to be traditional. She makes very traditional decisions, but she's not traditional. And one of the things I pointed out, hello, darling. One of the things I pointed out to her this week, and I want you to take this in, there are no enlightened traditionalists. This is about walking your own path. This is about you finding out who you are as the ascended God you are. And purpose and divine purpose and potential is just about going on that far enough so that you give your own unique voice to this world in some way, shape, or form. You know, I remember years ago, I've always had this spiritual bent. I've always had the same things that are important to me now. I'm just the more sophisticated version of those. But I've had the opportunity all my life to go to seminary, you know? And that was the only option available to me when I was young. Go to seminary. And I never did. Something always stopped me from going to seminary. I don't think, I mean, who's to know? Yeah. But I don't think I would have come up with what I believe now if I had gone a traditional route. So, don't be a traditionalist. Let's do something that is unique to you. Don't try to find that with your ego.
Yeah.
But go on this path and clear the ego out and see who you are then.
Yeah, because I believe your journey and your connection to God is unique to you. It's right here. It's about everything that you are and you have been and you will be. And that's where you're going to connect. That's what... I'm losing my words, but you know what I'm trying to say.
I always know what you're trying to say. You know, I think that I was put in mind when you were saying this of one of the acting exercises that I did, and it was such a good acting exercise that I then took it into corporate America, and I said, I put somebody as their point of focus at the front of the room, and I said, that's everything you want, you know, and we would define that. What is it that you want? You know, a better job, more money, a relationship, whatever. It is there. Now, stand there and start talking. Stand on this mark and start talking. And they would just, you know, talk about getting that or not getting that or what they believed. And we would then say, with every line, all right, take one step forward, one step back, or stay still. Every thought they thought that they gave voice to was either taking them forward, taking them back, or having them stay still. I want you to think about what you want in terms of that. And this waiting thing is one of the very big problems. Yeah. We're all waiting for something because we're afraid of ourselves and going on. You know, we're either going forward, going backwards, or we are being distracted by something. Christina had an incredible story yesterday about distractions. I want her to put that on the table because this is how complicated your psyche is.
Yeah, it can be very tricky, and things are not always what they seem. So in our work, we're always digging deeper and looking for the truth beyond the truth that we don't want to admit or see. And I had one of those aha moments yesterday. I had a very good friend who is dear to me who had a cerebral hemorrhage a few weeks ago. And she, and I have been very sad about it and very upset. At the same time, my sister, who's very dear to me and very close to me, we spend a lot of time together, have a lot of fun together, we talk about everything. And I felt like this past week that she was pulling away from me. And in my mind, I convinced myself, well, she, you know, is pulling away because I'm upset right now. And so I worked up this whole story in my mind about this, and what do I do about it? Do I go and talk to her about it, or Do I need to just get over it? And I was just spinning in all of this surface stuff. And then it hit me so clearly yesterday. I am doing all of that as a distraction from feeling what I'm feeling about my friend who is in the hospital.
So you made these distractions about someone else.
Yeah, and I made it about a quote-unquote fixable problem. Like the problem with my sister that I created in my mind was something that I could talk through or work through or potentially come up with a solution for, but a friend who is dying, that was something completely out of my control. And so my mind, or your tricky ego, tricky psychic, wanted to distract myself from that pain and from that truth by giving me this other thing to look at, which really had nothing to do with it.
And by the way, the whole world is doing that right now.
Yeah.
You understand? Because we are arguing about some of the most ridiculous things because we can't find a solution to the bigger things.
Yeah.
So we talk about the, and by the way, I'm not making any political statements
we're
here.
not political.
You know, it's like, but we argue about the Confederate flag. We're arguing, for God's sake, about evolution. We're arguing about Harry Potter. We're arguing about anything because those are the things that we can find a solution for, instead of the bigger things that, as of yet, because of our consciousness, don't have solutions. So we're not comfortable with that. We've got to fix something.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what Christina was doing. That's what we all do.
Yeah, so I encourage you to look deeper. Look for that truth and look for what you're avoiding. I mean, that is what's causing you the real pain.
And the interesting thing is, when she realized that, what happened?
I felt lighter. Things felt easier. Suddenly, there wasn't a problem with my sister anymore. I realized I completely created that in my head. I felt better. I felt more at peace with everything.
And this is, you know, you keep in mind, had she kept that up, suppression, okay, and had she kept it up too long, depression.
Yes.
That's the way this works. Don't you be fooled by yourself. I think one of the big things that consciousness does for all of us is it makes us supremely honest about what we're doing. Now, I don't care what people are doing. I don't care what my clients are doing. I love them anyway. But I want them to get, as soon as possible, to being consciousness, to being honest about what they're doing and conscious about what they're doing, so they can just realize, oh, I'm still doing it. Because there is some relief even in that.
Yeah.
Okay. You've got to understand, distractions are fear. Fear is motivating that. Fear of change, fear of life, fear that you might fail, fear that you might disappoint, fear that you'll be exposed and humiliated, fear of the pain that will last forever, fear that no one will ever love you, fear that God isn't there. There are an infinite number of these fears. An infinite number, until you prove otherwise. And only you can prove otherwise. Christina and I can talk till we're blue in the face. You've got to be the one to prove it to yourself. And that's what's so nice about the conscious journey, is because when you start doing this, when you start confronting these things as lies, myths is a nice word for our past. They're just out and out lies most of the time.
Consciousness work opens you up to seeing the games that you're playing.
That's right.
Yeah,
it certainly helps. So you have to prove these things to yourself. And I wrote down a few things that I think I often see in clients. For example, that you believe someone can stop you. There are thwarts to what you want. Now, these are beliefs, because I'm going to tell you right now that there's nothing that's stopping you but you. And that means you better look at some of these beliefs that we all have, because they're just excuses. That's all they are. That something bad can happen to you, that the catastrophe is imminent, all right? That you better not move and you better not create anything new because you don't want to rock the boat because something bad will happen. High visibility in your life means that you're going to be exposed and therefore humiliated in the worst kind of ways, and that your decisions will lead to your ruin. Boy, that's great propaganda from the ego.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Back to the propaganda. The egoic child mind wants to keep you stagnant. It wants to keep you exactly where you are, where you have always been.
You see, the ego child's mind doesn't care if you're happy.
Yeah.
It just wants you safe. That's why we say that people that work from this are working from survival skills still. And you can't create anything wonderful except more survival when you're working from that level of energy. You understand this. Everything is a lie here. There is nothing out to get you except here. There is something, the unresolved past. So you have to resolve it. Because there's nothing happening to you that hasn't happened before. You just have different faces and circumstances on it. But it's what you are creating in your ego child's mind that you're afraid of. And here it comes. Instead of realizing that you don't need that anymore and you're going to change the script. See, the interesting thing here is you're writing the same script over and over again, and that script already has the end written to it. Yeah. You can't change the end until you change the script. And these beliefs that you have, that you are thinking all the time, that have underlying programming, those things are not changing. Therefore, you get the same end every time. We want you to create something different. Well, you're going to have to create a different script. And that's scary. That's scary for most people. Because your ego is telling you, oh, can't do that. Something terrible is going to happen if I do that. Don't mess with something that's semi-working.
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 We have a process here. Let's stick to it. Let's not
mess with anything. Okay. Well, you should mess with it. Consciousness work is about being willing to confront these lies, having mercy on yourself as human, and realizing that honestly, you're just finding your way home, like everyone is. And where is home? I'm not talking about dying and going to heaven. I'm talking about what you create right here, right now. If you go to that authenticity, which is what consciousness work does, you're finding your way home. Because you're nothing but love, and if you are living any other way and not getting all the beneficence of love, we're just in the way. That's all. We got to find out how. So I think we ought to talk about here, how do you get moving? Let's talk about how you get moving. The first thing that comes to mind is get moving by doing it.
This is where Nike was really enlightened.
There you go. Just do it. Yes, that's true. Whoever came up with that slogan came up with a good one. I remember an actor. It was a young man who was adorable. And what I had suggested to the class was absolutely not working for him. In terms of a trick, a signal for him to get his energy up into the peak performance arena. We want you to have one ability to do that. If you, by the way, want to hear more about that, there's some CDs it's called the IT series. It's all about how to do business with this energy that we're talking about. It's quite powerful. Anyway, I remember him having this light bulb moment. And what was so cute is he said, "Oh, I realize I've been thinking about doing this and not doing it." I can't think of a better explanation for this. You can't think about this. You have to do it. Thinking about it is an excuse.
Yeah, that's spinning around in the mental realm.
That's right.
And that's just another distraction, make you think you're doing something when you're not really doing anything.
And another thing that we talked about yesterday in class is dithering is a great signal. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't remember what we talked about this in terms of you, but it was something, but we were saying, you know, she was going, should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do this? Should I do that? And the truth is she shouldn't have done any of it. She should have listened to the inner, and then she would have been fine. Yeah. But she was distracting herself, you know. So do it. Here's the interesting thing, though. Take baby steps if you must, but don't lie to yourself that you're making a big gesture. All we need for you to do is tell the truth to yourself. You can take baby steps. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to make a huge gesture. As a matter of fact, most people can't make that huge gesture. It scares them too much. Take baby steps, but don't make it sound huge.
Yeah.
Just realize what you're doing in a realistic manner. Starting is a big effort, and give yourself credit for that. But do separate it from the lie that, you know, you're queen of the world or king of the world. I mean, for heaven's sakes, that's the ego rearing its lovely head again. Okay. Another idea that might help is try to develop a new discipline. One thing at a time. Remember that we've talked about you need to move. We've got to have movement mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Certainly we know what we do. Listen to what we can offer you. We can offer you free archived videos on blogtalkradio.com. Listen to those. Listen more than once. Start a consciousness study group. You can make those the center of what you do. I see somebody calling in. We will get to you in just a second. Yes, thank you. She just pointed out the fact that we have 19 more minutes, and I'll get to it right away. We want you to realize there's also, though, there is something called the seeker to feel good pattern. We don't want you to do things that feel good. We're sitting over here knocking ourselves out every week trying to push your buttons a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay? Because if we can rattle the cells and some of these old beliefs, you'll go to a new order. There's always chaos before a new order. So I want you all to realize that what feels good is not always the most spiritual thing you should do or the most emotionally powerful thing that you can do. We want you to not seek a fantasy God that always makes you feel good, but a living God that can really travel through your life and through every single circumstance of your being and support you and soothe you and offer you what God is supposed to offer you in reality. I also say another thing is to seek conscious teachers. You know, the thing about remember that the teacher appears when the student is ready. So get yourself ready. Start somewhere. Now, if your teachers have stopped at some point, you're going to have to leave them and go on to a different teacher. It's one of the things that I always had to do. It's one of the things that I resolved not to be in my time. I want to keep growing for me. That you benefit from it, I'm thrilled. But I want to know more always. I suggest that you know the same. Let's go to our caller right now. Hello, this is a 404 Exchange. To whom am I speaking?
Hey, Martha, it's Mickey like the mouse.
Well, Mickey like the mouse. I am crazy about you, Mickey. How have you been?
I've been great. How about you?
I've been great, too. Thank you so much for asking. Wonderful changes
Good to
happening
hear.
in all sorts of ways. Darling, what's on your mind today? And by the way, this is Christina. So, Mickey.
Hi, Mickey.
Hi, Christina.
What's on your mind, darling?
So, you know, we're sitting here talking about changes and things in the past and fixing them and everything. And I keep finding the same stuff coming up in my life that I'm like, okay, really? I thought I took care of this.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it ever stops. And I'm like, why does it keep coming up? If I thought I fixed, I mean, obviously I didn't fix it, but like the oldest story in the book, I keep meeting these men that I'm dating that are my dad. And I'm trying so hard. Like, I just keep, the second I see they're like my dad, I walk away. I'm like, I can't keep reliving this. And I don't know why they keep coming back. Help!
That's exactly what Martha was saying about the script. It's the same script, just different actors every time. Because there's something that isn't resolved.
Exactly,
there.
but why?
You haven't gotten to the deepest truth. These things are like an onion. You have to peel back the layers. I don't know if you're working with someone or you have been. But that's where someone outside can be an objective observer and help you get to the deepest level of these truths. There's something there that you haven't yet connected with and seen, or you would be letting go of this.
Yeah, the interesting thing, darling, is I hear this a lot. You
Yeah.
can imagine I hear this a lot. And people are really surprised. They'll say, and they'll even argue with me when they first start with me, they'll say, I've dealt with that. And it's like, no, Because until we get to the bottom line, and by the way, a lot of bottom lines, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, nothing goes away.
Yeah.
So if we're just with a teacher or a mentor or a guide that addresses, some emotional issue, you're not on the deepest level of everything. That's why it's not clearing. There is still some need for the Father that is not resolved yet until we find what that is on the deepest level of our being, where we don't want to look oftentimes.
Yeah.
That is going to keep repeating itself. Now, you're aggravated by this. And where I'm seeing it as a good thing,
Yeah.
because this is a great signal to you that it hasn't cleared yet. So I ask you to, I don't know who you're working with, and darling, that's not my business, but I urge you to seek someone who is going to kick your butt.
Yeah.
And really go down there and tell you some things about yourself and encourage you to find those things about yourself where you have not looked. Because this is the fact that it's repeating itself is just saying you're not at the bottom line yet. It doesn't mean that there's not a finite amount of this energy. It just means that you're not finished yet. Now, I know you're aggravated and you want to be finished. And I'm saying, that is just one of the ego things that happens. We get impatient, and that's the ego's trick, to keep us doing what we're doing.
Yeah, because then we spend our time in the aggravation energy instead of the energy of movement and the energy of working on it.
And the energy of truth.
Yes.
Because there is some truth we're not getting to yet. And, Mickey, I love you. I know you. And we would be honored to talk with you about this and work with you if you want to do this. But this is what we do here in this place. A lot of people come to me that have been with a lot of programs, and they come here, and all I can say is, well, here you're going to dump it, because I'm only interested in the bottom line, and Christina has been well trained to that. We're only interested in the bottom line. We're interested not in your change for our egos, but because there's a bottom line that frees us all ultimately. And yes, these things do go away, because the ego child's mind does go away. And this is the dawning of our spiritual maturity. Our ego is never going to go away, because it shouldn't. But the ego child's mind does, that part of us that thinks like a child. And this is the part of you that keeps bringing these men over and over again. And part of it, darling, as I tune into you, is that you think it's different every time, instead of being discerning and really looking and seeing it's not. That's why you get tripped.
Well, I will say this, though. This last one, I actually caught myself and went, whoa, it's happening again. And that's why I'm calling you, because I happened across the show this morning, and I'm like, holy moly, it's happening again.
I love it. And I think give yourself a little pat on the back, because when we start seeing the patterns, that's the beginning of it. You're right there. You're seeing it clearly as a pattern. So therefore you can do something about it. Before it was unconscious. You know, now it's here. It's up in your face. That's awesome.
But I am going to say one thing, and this is just an addendum to what it's not as easy as I see it, I can do something about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's
she didn't mean that.
It's work. I'm not going to kid you.
Because there are some things that what's important is to have a guide that is neutral for you. I mean, just wants what's in your best interest.
Yeah.
But is neutral for you, because with every single one of us, there are some things that we don't want to see.
Yeah.
And we won't let ourselves see it, because then we'd have to change it, and we couldn't do the same thing we're doing. But see, you're getting something out of this. You may feel like this is the only way that you can get love, or that your dad is out there in some way and it's going to finally give you what you want. That's not true. You won't ever get what you want this way.
Yeah, you're trying to get a different ending. You're trying to resolve that for yourself on a mental, emotional level.
So you're pulling in people that are like your dad, and you're surprised that this doesn't work out. It's because you've got to rewrite the script to begin with. If I had 100 people in this room right now, 99 who were perfect for you, and one who was very father-like, that's who you'd choose.
That's who your energy would be drawn to. It's like a magnet. Your energy matches that energy, and until you break that, it's just going to keep happening, unfortunately.
So there's some things that we have to do, Mickey, to resolve the past. We've got to go down there and see what you're not saying to yourself, because if you were saying it to yourself, you wouldn't still be doing this. And so we got to go find out what those things are. Those things that are not being said. And those deep beliefs that are the programming that keep repeating this over and over again. You understand now, right?
I hear you loud and clear. I think you and I need to talk off the air and see what we come up with.
Yeah.
Well, darling, all you have to do is call me, okay?
Yeah, and we're not at the bottom line.
I certainly will. Thank you so much, ladies.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
We love you.
Thanks. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye, darling. So, go ahead and say.
Well, I was just going to say we're not at the bottom line till we're at us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can fool ourselves into thinking it's about all the other people, but it's really about us and facing those deeper, harder truths. And that's why you need someone outside that can help you compassionately guide you there, because it is really hard to face those truths about yourself. None of us want to do that.
No, a common one certainly is that I am unlovable in some way. Well, God's all you are. How can you be unlovable when you're just believing that in your ego child's mind? Eventually, that goes away once you have resolved the issues that created that. Then we have to look mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Angela has written today. I want to read this. How do you fight off emotions? And get back focused and in line with... Oops.
Sorry, I was trying to see the rest of the message.
It's not letting us see the rest of the message, but I think we've got enough in that question. I think that's a very good question, Angela. The answer to what you just asked is in how you wrote this line. You said, how do you fight off emotions? That's the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Because fighting off emotions just proves that there's something wrong there. And what you need to do is embrace all emotion and get right with it.
Yeah.
You are human. There's absolutely nothing that is wrong with you, darling. That is not wrong with us all. And by the way, right with us all. Okay?
Yeah, and that word jumped out at both of us, because our language is a really good look into our psyche. Using a word like fight, like you said, it implies that emotion is bad.
That's right.
And as soon as we label something as bad, we've just put a separation between us and it.
That's right. And the more we do that, the more we try to fight off the emotions that take us down, the more entrenched they become. Every time you do that, they entrench more the avoidance of that. I'm telling you, what you need to do is find out what you are not resolved to and accept that about yourself and find out it's not going to kill you, because it won't. We are made up of a mental body, an emotional body, a physical body, a spiritual body, and a spiritual body is all the bodies because it's the energetic body, right? And your good third of you, the way you interact with the world mentally, emotionally, and physically, emotion is a third of your learning and communication process. Darling, you are truncating it. That we should be sad sometimes, deeply grieved sometimes, happy sometimes, that we have to be a full participant in every aspect of our being to be our potential. So it's about learning and finding out how to accept all that and go on and transcend all this and find out what we have thought about ourselves shouldn't be avoided. We should look at it. We should say, here's the way I am in this. I am the most selfish person I know. And I'm also the most generous. I have accepted these things about me. I am not trying to hide these things. And in that ownership of this, I have a choice to be something in this moment. If you are not choosing and accepting, all of you, you have no choice. That's why we react to things that remind us of the past instead of embracing all we are.
Yeah, the ego child's mind compartmentalizes and says, this part of me is good, this part of me is bad, that part I don't want, this part's okay, I'll keep that. And all of that does is separate you. Your intuition, your voice, your guides, all of that's going to come through you, but you have to be in full acceptance of who you are, all of that. And my friend Tracy gave me a great visual for this. She calls it the soup. She was like, it's the Christina soup, and yours is the Angela soup. It's just another part of the soup. You know, it doesn't have to be bad or good or anything. It's just another part of who you are.
Yes. You know, if you were making a wonderful vegetable soup here, you aren't just the carrots.
Yeah.
You know, and yet that's what you're doing by trying to deny these negative feelings. You've got to prove that they're not going to take you under. But you see, your ego says they will.
Yeah.
So we have got to address these things. Darling, you certainly can call. Listen, my website, because we are running out of time here, is Martha Burgess Novak, BurgessNovak.net. Write me. Call me. My phone number is 404-307-8188. And you can reach me, you can get on the website, you can find Christina, you can talk to all of us, and we can make some session times with you if we are your teachers.
Yes.
Now, there may be many of them out there. I know that one of our advanced people right now, who's one of my marvelous healers named Betty, and Betty, I'm talking to you, met me years ago, and she said, whoa, too much for me, and she had to go away for a while and do some other things before she came back and certainly joined our program. So we just want what's best for you, okay? We have very little time left, but I think it's important for us to encapsulate what you have just learned from all this, because I feel the same thing that has been going on in our lives, and we want to share something with you.
My dear friend Catherine that I mentioned earlier, that 3 weeks ago had a cerebral hemorrhage, passed away last night. And I realized in a conversation we were having last night about this, that every person I love that has passed has given me an amazing gift. And I see the absolute beauty in that each time someone I love, I've said goodbye to them, they've given me the opportunity to choose this gift, to take it or not take it.
A deeper level of love.
A deeper level of love. Mm-hmm. And this includes pets as well. A dear dog named Sarge passed last year at Christmas, and he opened me up to a deeper level of love that I didn't think was possible. And I'm going through this with my, as my friend Catherine passed, and I sincerely believe the gift she has been giving me right now is the message, don't wait.
That's why we're talking about this today. Darlings, don't wait till you're old. Do this. Do this now. Either call us or call somebody. Let's go on and get through with this. Let's go on and create the life you want and not be reactive to life anymore. Let's make sure you get what you want. I assure you it's there. I absolutely assure you it's there. You know, when I mention this to some people, and can you accept radical change? They go, no, but radical change is always good. All change is good. Nothing's here to hurt you except the past, which just wants to be resolved. Yeah. Anything is an excuse. The only thing that is abiding is you as love. And we
90 seconds.
I just got the 90-second mark, darlings.
Well, we're still on Facebook, even if that goes down. But
listen, kids, we love you very much. We'll be here for you next week at this hour, and with another show. And please listen to the other shows that we put forth for you. We do this because we love you, and some of you don't. We don't even know. Yeah. Some of you we do, but we're all sisters and brothers in
60 seconds.
in the energy of love.
And so our message, don't wait. Your life is right here, right now, in this moment, and the magic is in the movement. Keep moving.
Keep moving, kids. We love you. Take care. God bless you. I'm going to pray for you after the show today since we're running out of time. Bye-bye.